I will tell you this bedtime story because Governor Bob Ferguson in the state of Washington, where I live, is obviously deeply psychotic. He's never responded to my appeal for a mandamus. One can assume that he denies doing anything. He's allowing UW Dialectical to run amok. When I was about 14 years old, a very big man named Donald broke my sister's ribs. She had no recourse. There was nothing I could do. He gave me 14 stitches. Yet, to this day, people champion him. And the people who champion him include Bob Ferguson and very powerful agencies like Robert Fripp of King Crimson. Carnegie Mellon University has run absolutely amok. They contacted people from the CIA and told them that I was lying about it, and that if they didn't take measures, why, the truth might come out, which isn't how they put it, of course. And it really doesn't have anything to do with estate value, because somebody like me, who is poor and deaf, a tycoon can either make or break me as a toy. And even if I didn't want them to make me, they could do so, and clearly they could break me with just as much routine ease. So what Carnegie Mellon is doing is passing money bags around back and forth. Now, it isn't every day that you hear that a Pittsburgh public school student with an association to Bush and Eisenhower is targeted by the maniacal right wing of Carnegie Mellon University. But it doesn't have anything to do with estate value. It has to do more with the presumption of common decency towards a person of distinguished status. Now, of course, the butcher shop mangles their storyline and something like that. They want to destroy the United States, but they are the true patriots. Comes rolling out simultaneously from their fourth tongue, which is probably a clear sign of British involvement. It has more to do with Steve Langer's claim, or his admission, that he's not sorry for anything he did, only that it had to be me. The reason it had to be me was because of the archetypal value of a soft little white child. It's an archetype. It's a dollhouse signifier. And of course, these were Zionists, stark raving mad Zionists. They were allowed to poison me, try to kill me repeatedly. Carnegie Mellon University comes yapping that a girl who was never bruised even, who was never spoken to wrong, who herself would let out blood-curdling statements at the top of her lungs, who was completely untarnished, unblemished, uninjured, and who was the aggressor, put up a sign that said, "Hide here under my cloak" at Carnegie Mellon University, is so so confused, conflicted, that it weakens the knees of the army sergeants and fraternities at this charnel house, Carnegie Mellon University. It finds its way all the way back to the Branch Davidians in Texas. And who is her appointed champion who saw the truth about me? Someone who had a sort of Big Donald thing going also with the girl whose ribs were broken by Big Donald, who burned two girls' arms, one of them gangrenous with poker from the fireplace while working for Mr. Rogers. Public relations landed squarely on his side. John Schulman was defended by Tony Levin, and Leslie Katz was his partner. He was arrested with somebody from Ellis. I mean, it's a small little crime team. But, you know, the Marines are coming at you. They have this Don Corleone service going with Carnegie Mellon. It really does not have anything to do with the state value. I mean, even in the most deranged, schizoid stretch of the android zone, could anybody at the governor's school claim to have written my poetry? Not that they don't try to do that. Greg Carl said, impinge on the persona's experience. We ate your brain was one of the things they put up in Carnegie Mellon. Read my lips, said George Bush, and he was working with Eno and Bowie, you know. We're going to tell this story through your machine head and stuff. The reason it doesn't have anything to do with the state value is because the tycoons can cheat somebody like me with great ease. And they rob and get away with robbing museums. And they created a story. Like Vladimir Nabokov has this poem that begins, I was the shadow of the waxwing slain by the false azure of the window pane. Let's look at that. The story of the bird, Gail Burstyn called the so-called story of Lenin's demise. Story, I was the shadow of the waxwing slain. I'm the walrus. By the false azure of the window pane, in other words, by the story that's told in media, which is a rotten, stinking lie. It was all put together for this ends by the people who established the narrative about Lee Harvey Oswald. And you have like this butcher shop of podcasters, all of whom advocate for Big Donald, who broke my sister's ribs. That doesn't mean anything, because they're whimpering with horror that I would say boo on a napkin to Matt Marcus's favorite. He never burned her arms gangrenous with a hot poker from the fireplace. Mr. Rogers says, good for Matt, that he will come out swinging for their favorite. And George Galloway is whimpering and peeing in his plaids because Jim McQueen said boo on a napkin to their favorite. And that justifies raping Duff Cheney. That justifies murdering Shannon Harps. Cersei Kennedy, making Don Corleone threats. And they have what they consider the perfect system. Somebody from Mercy gave me this note, which I can show you. I have it in the drawer over here. So I think you understand me after playing a game of hypnography all day. So they bloody well will get 50-50 of whatever the fuck um, these maniacs in Tycoon Center, New York, come up with about somebody who they decided to break and use. Again, Langer said, what Langer and Shulman had nuts and cats in common. Just as Shulman's employee has one of Donald Trump's speechwriters in common with Donald Trump. He said, I'm not sorry for anything, did only they had to be you. It had to be the pale white suck associated with Eisenhower and Bush. And they get on the phone. Brian Neal gets on the phone and says, Queerball is impugning Eisenhower by association. I'm impugning Eleanor Roosevelt by association too. Martha Gellhorn wrote to me. I didn't demand that she write to me. I didn't twist her arm. I didn't send her messages. I didn't give her conveyances from Biden to do it. She just did. She threw herself in my path when I was in Montana. I volunteered at the Freddy's feed and read and opened the box, and there was her book, The Face of War, which Atlantic had published. It was obvious what I was going to do. I was going to write to her about what happened on that desert island. She was brave enough to address the issue with me. The Don Corleone message that I get from the Eisenhower people and from the Bush people is ruthlessly consistent. You know, the butcher shop of Carnegie Mellon University has this idea, which plays out in Tacoma, of course, has this idea of Robert's card. They get a guy named Robert Card to shoot up these deaf kids in a bowling alley, but that doesn't matter. Their lives were deaf after all. Has a state value. It wouldn't surprise me if Paul McCartney's fabulating mind about, he'd pronounces tug of war, that they're pulling this thing back and forth as a medium to get psychopaths orbiting me. That wouldn't surprise me at all. The obscene idea that because they believe that I was an indentured servant to Ray Geiger, that he would believe that. I mean, I'm not inclined to make a fuss about the fact that I washed dishes to put a roof over his head because I admired him and he was my friend. And he needed to paint. But it's not a bartering chip when it comes to this butcher shop. That you meant well and didn't do him any harm at all. They invent ideas about you doing him harm. And there's all kinds of sophisticated gurgy of techniques. Did you pick your nose when he was talking about his girlfriend? That's an offense against your reputation. This is a sort of deranged intimacy that comes out of this Corleone feedback loop that comes out of the Wobblies and stuff. And they keep implying that they want 50-50 of something. And the point wouldn't be to go to court and lay down a foundation of rational appeal to somebody whose life they molested, because they had no right to make their sadistic secret peep show films with me, much less to sell them on the black markets. What they want to be able to do is prove to themselves that they can become godfathers in the United States. And this is Seattle City Council work and so forth. And they act out these macabre drama, guerrilla theater presentations of their mentality. And it wouldn't surprise me if somebody said, give him back Robert's card and then make him sell it to us and we'll take 50%. And so the card wasn't sent to me to begin with. It's really that treacherous and bizarre at Carnegie Mellon. It's very, very disturbing. And Bob Ferguson is like pretending that he's not involved in it. It's good night to that bedtime story. It's just a bedtime story. I get the feeling that someone impinged that they control the Outer Limits television involved in addressing the deranged stalking and abuse that Yoko Ono is behind. You know, in theory, you're allowed to confront your accuser. They don't even admit to me that they've accused me and who the accusers are, much less do they intend to stand for it becoming part of the public record that the people who tortured me in the first place were John Lennon and his cronies, and that Lennon pulled a Houdini, which is perfectly obvious from the evidence. I was the shadow of the waxwing slain by the false azure of the window pane.